Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. In about one more minute, we're going to get started tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, good evening and welcome, everybody. It is the top of the hour, so I will call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Jess, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Present.
Mr. Mosher,
Here.
Ms. Duncan,
Here.
Mr. Yestad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Pike,
Here.
Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Thank you. Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to special reports. Is there anyone here for government to government this evening? Municipal boards, commissions, committees? Municipal departments? School district? Then the special reports from students and guests. Seeing none, that'll bring us to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual. The button on the very bottom.
All right.
There you are.
My name is Christian Fabian. I am driving cab in Sitka since 2010. I learned from Hank Moore. And I switched over to Baranoff Taxi in 2016. Hank took his car off the road. I would like to get awareness raised to a major problem we have in this town right now, which is the code changes. It's unprecedented. It was always very easy to get a license. And I'm not saying, we fulfilled the requirements for the license, but, this is Ted Lara from Baranoff Taxi wrote a letter to the paper and I think addressed the city administrator and city lawyer that initially the cab fares are still the pricing from 15 to 18 years ago. I don't know if you ever took a cab here in town. I don't know if you know what the regular town fare is, but I'm not here to talk about raising the prices. It's actually a little more severe because the cabs cannot operate the way they usually operate. And so a call for help has actually turned into a hardship to that point that although I think it's well-intended, I think the city lawyer and the administrator, you work together with the police chief to make some changes, but the changes started happening 3 weeks before the tour season. So, you cannot operate as a taxi and a tour anymore. And that was based on an experience from one driver changing a tax fare into a tour. And instead of fining the driver, if that's the true story I heard, we don't have to change the entire code. And just at this point, we had 10 cabs on the road last year, and that was not enough. In order for peak times to operate the town, well, I think we need 15 to 20 cars, which is, not really possible. But we are down with, Totes is going out of business. Harmony is, there will be no more Totes as of the middle of June. I'm not driving for Totes, but She's a lady in town working really hard. I know the people love Toad's Taxi. I urge, you're the governing body of the city. I urge you to reach out to Harmony and ask her what she needs to keep her business on the road. And I know changes need to be done, but what is the highest good for all involved? For everyone to be happy doesn't really reflect well on Sitka. There are rumors that no cabs are available when they come, and they're going to be down from 10 cabs to 3 this summer. So I think something has to be done. Something has to be done really quickly in order for us. And you also will miss out some revenue if you only have 3 cars on the road. So thank you for listening.
My name's Wayne Dye. I'm not sure I'm talking to the right audience, but I'm sure with your powers, you can pass it on or whatever, but the tourist season's here, and I've seen a lot of tourists jump off the bike path, go down in the ditch, pop up real suddenly on the edge of the road and cut across to the Raptor Center. That's a real dangerous situation. But what I haven't seen is any signs directing them to safer pathways. You know, so, and because of that neglect, either the city or the state or both are, if anybody gets hit there, they could be liable for a big lawsuit. That area is in a shaded area, and the drivers are coming down the road from both directions or in the sunshine right until they get to that way. And then all of a sudden they're in the shadow of the forest. You know, so their visibility can't be that great there. And then motorists aren't always alert to or courteous to pedestrians. And some of those motorists are actually going to be playing with their phones while they're driving. It's inevitable. So I just think there's something should be done about signage showing those people a safer pathway to take. Yeah, that's about all I got to say.
Good evening, Richard Wien. I certainly agree with William Dye. I think that the solution Oh, my gosh. So anyway, the bottom line is that things have gone up, property taxes, food, and you'll see that utilities have gone up and they will not go down. What do you think is going to happen next year? So let's have a resolution for the full PFD because people in Sitka are hurting and they are going to need it. I dare you. Record.
Anyone else under persons to be heard this evening? Any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that'll bring us to consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approve the minutes of the April 18th and 28th assembly meetings.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Jess?
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
There are no commission or committee appointments this evening, which would bring us, and no unfinished business. That would bring us to our new business this evening. We'll be at item B. Item B, the assembly will be convening as a board of adjustment to hear an appeal filed by Youth Advocates of Sitka for the Planning Commission's denial of a conditional use permit for a quasi-institutional group residence at 3411 Halibut Point Road. The assembly does have or the Board of Adjustment does have a procedure to go through this evening. There will be a 10-minute presentation by staff, followed by a 10-minute appellant presentation. That will be followed by a opportunity for the public to talk to the appeal. Please make sure that the comments are germane to the appeal. That's 3 minutes per individual. And then the staff and appellant will each have 5 minutes as for clarifying statements, followed by an evidentiary portion for the Board of Adjustment. With that, I would entertain a motion to convene as Board of Adjustment.
I move to convene as the Board of Adjustment.
Second. Jess on the motion?
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Assembly. We are now currently seated as the Board of Adjustment. Brian, would you mind refreshing the Assembly on their obligations as a Board of Adjustment?
Thank you. Mayor just outlined the process. I won't repeat that as far as the way the presentation goes. I would just remind you that after following the process, it is the obligation of the Assembly to satisfy itself that the general criteria required in making the Planning Commission making its decision to deny the conditional use permit. You must look at that to see whether or not that criteria has been met. And in particular, Sitka General Code section 2230-160 subpart C lays out those 5 criteria. And you should have that in your packet tonight. I do want to put the Assembly, the Board of Adjustment on notice that there are other issues, particularly legal issues and constitutional issues that have arisen in this case that deserve some kind of review, consideration, an opinion, and recommendation from either myself or an outside counsel. In particular, some of the questions that have been brought up whether it's legal to require a conditional use permit for a quasi-institutional group residence. That'd be the first legal question. The second one, if it is legal, did the planning commission exceed its authority by denying the permit on unconstitutional grounds? And the third one, if it didn't exceed the authority, was the decision based on unconstitutional bias? In other words, was it discriminatory under the Fair Housing Act? Now, these constitutional / legal issues were brought up by people in support of the appeal. And as you know, I've been abroad for the last over 2 weeks and have just now today had a chance to review these claims of legal issues. And I did not have sufficient time to come to an opinion on those legal issues. And I think because of the potential liability for having any decision thrown out or affected by a lawsuit, this body, as the Board of Adjustment, should consider staying its process. In other words, putting it on hold until these recommendations can be made from a legal perspective. I don't want to go into the details. I don't have a preliminary opinion on these. I just think they are sufficient enough, rational enough, where it's prudent to go forward in that direction. So I'm recommending that ultimately that you not make any final decision on this, regardless of where the facts of the criteria fall, until those legal concerns are opined upon. If you have any questions about that, or if I'm clear, that's fine. If not, please ask me now.
Right, it would still be your recommendation to hear the appeal tonight, however, but simply delay our decision until we have further information.
Well,
Or should we wait to hear the appeal as well?
See, I think these legal concerns are serious enough to, and there's enough, looks like a lot of these people are here for this particular matter. If we're going to take all this public testimony and provide, have staff time and the applicant, the appellant, spend all this time talking about this, and then we come back and I recommend to you, or some other attorney recommends to you, to overturn the decision based solely on legal grounds and not on the facts of how the planning commission analyzed the criteria, we'd be in a position of wasting a lot of time here tonight. But the other side of the coin is that we've got everybody here, so you could go through the process, and then we could put everything on hold, put a stay on the decision until the legal opinion is rendered and you have a chance to consider that legal opinion at a later date.
Yeah, I understand. When you first started talking, it was my intent to go through the process because we are gathered and there are people who have spent time to get here tonight. But I also understand your point of view that the assembly may be presented with information that leaves us with no other choice, kind of rendering the hearing null at that point. So I guess I would leave it up to the Board of Adjustment to kind of feel out where, if they'd like to go through the hearing tonight or pause for further legal review.
I have a question for Brian, if I can. So Brian, is there a risk if we go through the whole process and then we find that there's legal issues and we possibly make a different decision anyway, to saying that we were swayed, that in a lawsuit somebody saying we were swayed by the testimony or swayed by things that happened tonight before we had the legal opinion? Am I making any sense on that?
I just all I can do is repeat my answer, and I don't think that that would affect it at all.
Okay.
I mean, clearly that this could go two ways. You could hear all the arguments by staff and the applicant and the public testimony about it, and then decide to grant the appeal. And then, so that would make all of the legal issues moot. Or you could deny the appeal, and then the legal issues, I would suggest, still are valid and should be looked at before actually going forward with the denial of the appeal.
Just a question of process. Would we go through completion of item F tonight? So we would deliberate as a board, which then kind of shows what we're feeling with regards to the testimony that was received in the back and forth. So do we basically discuss a conclusion and say, but we're going to wait?
Correct. If we go through the hearing, we're going to go through all of the steps to include any potential motions afterwards. Brian, is it out of place to ask the appellant their position?
No, I don't think so.
If there is a position from the appellant tonight, if they'd like to have the hearing this evening or delay until, or not delay, postpone until further legal review, I'd be most interested in that position.
Can I ask a quick question when they organize?
Please.
Brian, what would be a potential time frame for you to come to a understanding yourself or have someone, another attorney look at it?
I think the time between now and the next meeting is a little too tight.
Okay,
I think we'd have to go 2 meetings.
so middle of June?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Harry, yeah, if you're welcome to step up. Or Heather, I'm sorry. And that clarifying information was, it looks like it would be the middle of June at this point. If we did remand back for further information. Which it sounds like that'll happen. Potentially, that is an option either way. However, it's your preference if you prefer the hearing this evening or at a future date. Welcome, and if you could just state your name for the record.
Thank you, Assembly. Thank you for taking this up on your agenda. My name is Heather Murray. I am the Executive Director of Youth Advocates of Sitka. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes to convene and make a decision. We will postpone our hearing for further consideration, especially legal consideration.
Okay, thank you for that. That does help the Board of Adjustments process. So we appreciate your opinion in that.
It feels better. I feel much better about waiting, and I'm grateful that you're willing to wait a little bit.
That was kind of my stance as well, as it felt like a stronger position to wait. However, I didn't want to unduly burden the appellant, which seems to have agreed with the process. So.
And it's hard because so many people have sent us emails, and there's a lot of people here that would like to speak. And as much as I would like them to speak, because I want to give them that opportunity, it just feels like if we rush it, it leaves opportunity for mistakes or errors or issues. I'd rather wait for the legal opinion and then go through it then. That's my preference.
Would we just withdraw the motion to convene?
I think we would need to remand it to a future assembly meeting once we have information.
Okay, we're not remanding, we're postponing the. actual
Okay,
board
I move.
adjustment.
We're postponing the hearing to the first meeting in June,
Yes.
June 13th.
I move to postpone this hearing until the first meeting in June.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone the Board of Adjustments hearing until the first assembly meeting in June, pending further legal opinion. Is there any public comment on postponing the meeting?
Many of us spent a lot of time
If you could
to
state
get
your name
ready,
for the
and I am
record, please.
against postponing
could
it.
state your name for the
Valerie
record.
Nelson for the record.
Thank you.
Sitka General Code states that the appeal shall be filed within 10 not 10 business days, 10 calendar days. And our attorney,
Ma'am, this is on
I know.
postponing. the
my
hearing.
reason for postponing is because this is not a timely filed appeal. The meeting was on April 5th. The appeal was filed on the 19th, and the attorney doesn't have the authority to go against Sitka General Code. And you all swore to uphold Sitka General Code when you took your oaths of office. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on appeal on postponing the hearing until the first meeting in June?
Amy Ainsley, Planning and Community Development Director. I just wanted to note for the public that as a part of the appeal process, the planning department sends out a notification to all the same property owners that are in the surrounding vicinity of the property. We notice them of the appeal date, as well as anyone who testified at the planning commission meeting as well. If people don't sign into our sheet and leave their information, we can, it's sometimes a little difficult to track down their mailing address, but we do the best that we can to notify everybody. So I just wanted to assure everyone that we will send out that next notification for the future appeal date. So if you received a mail notice of this appeal date, you will receive another notice when the next appeal date is set. And I just wanted to note as well that if there are any questions about the date on which this appeal was filed, I personally take responsibility for that.
And I would keep it germane to postponing the motion or postponing the hearing, but thank you.
Fair. I'll leave myself available if members of the public want to contact me at a later date about that.
Any other public comment on postponing the hearing until the first meeting in June?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. I think postponement is actually a good thing. As a matter of fact, I'm a little surprised based on what we heard here this evening that it even went forward until the case was ready. I think that if it went forward tonight in any particular way, it would be a tainted and incomplete proceeding, which at the end of the day would have been unfair for everyone. So postpone away.
Mary Magnuson, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Mayor and Assembly. It should be postponed because this is an incomplete application. The DOT right-of-way runs within 2 feet of the front of that house. There is no legal parking. The planning committee or commission was correct in denying this. It will affect the character of the neighborhood drastically. If we don't follow zoning, well, what's to say that we can do anything we want? And it isn't just going in there as a CUP. There's also a variance requested for more people than allowed. So there are 2 factors in that piece. But the big piece is there isn't enough information. The DOT permit required for that property to operate this way has not been made. I contacted them. They said, no, nobody's asked us for a permit. So the case isn't finished because the application isn't finished. The onus on the appellate to make sure that all the permits are in line before requesting this from you hasn't been met. There's been a lot of disingenuous stuff going on here, and it's not okay. So postponement is probably the best thing so that there's time to really gather the truth. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mary Todd Anderson. I just want to bring up the fact too, in terms of the appeal, that I agree with the statement that all the information is not there. And also to keep in mind that if the planning commission made this, overturned this or ruled against it, where do we stop or where do we start? I mean,
And ma'am, right now, it's
Okay,
just
about the
speaking
appeal.
about
I
postponing the
agree with
appeal.
postponing it for the reasons that all the information is not here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Britt Glannon. I am also in favor of postponing the appeal. I do have a question about the review of the appeal for the 3 potential legal reasons, and whether or not that is a reason to postpone or a request that this body think about during that postponement period. There are some statements that are made in the applicant's appeal that are related to the legal concerns that are not entirely factual. And so I would be curious to know if there are minutes of the testimony that was given at the planning commission meeting and between the comments that the planning commissioners made and the comments that those in opposition made, to see if it was in fact actually discriminatory, as that is one of the potential reasons why this could be overturned or why the city could be sued. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak on postponing the hearing until the first meeting in June 13th? Back to the Board of Adjustment for deliberation. Jess, on postponement?
Yes, on the postponement to postpone it to June 13th meeting. Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great, thank you. Before we go back, before we reconvene as the assembly, I just want to thank everybody who took their time to come out tonight. Apologize we weren't able to do this hearing, but there is more information that the Board of Adjustment does need to gather before this hearing can be held. So we appreciate your time this evening and look forward to seeing you again on June 13th. Tor?
I move to reconvene as the assembly.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We are reconvened as the assembly in regular session. We will pause briefly for the room to clear, and then we will jump right back into new business. All right, and the assembly will continue down on its new business this evening. Thank everyone in the room for continuing their conversations outside the room.
All right, I move to approve ordinance 2023-06 on first reading, adopting budgets and capital improvements plan for the general fund, internal service funds, and special revenue funds for the fiscal year July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024.
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 23-06. Is there any public comment? John, would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is a wrap up of the budget that we've been working on, well, at least staff has been working on since late October, early November of last year. And then the multiple meetings that we've had throughout the first calendar quarter of this year. We've included all of the input we received from the Assembly and the strategic plan. In front of you is the ordinance to approve the budget that we've discussed throughout this year. And Melissa Haley is also here if there are any questions on specific content that may not have already been addressed in previous meetings.
Great, appreciate that. Is there any public comment on ordinance 23-06?
Good evening, Richard Ween. And I can only say, how time has flied. The budget season has just taken a wing, and now we are on the first reading to approve. What is interesting about this general fund is that in the analysis, the first sentence under revenue is the overall takeaway from budget meetings was that the Assembly was comfortable continuing with an optimistic but cautious approach. And just to remind everyone is that the Assembly is the governing body, and therefore that the decision that they make on this budget is their full responsibility and decision. Of note is that there was, even though there was an overall takeaway, the important thing to note is that, as I recall, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of discussion in picking through the budget to do any cutting or to have any real heavy-duty questions. There were a few additions. My concern is that as in the past, there's very little conversation. But I would just like to say, as we move into an inflationary and maybe a stagflationary period, that we, God bless us, are increasing the budget. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. One question I know you won't answer is how many additional FTEs were added to within the last calendar year, and also, you can go back for 2 years, how bloated, I mean, increased this this budget actually is. And so they're saying it and resulted in a 14% increase. And there are a lot of assumptions that tourism, et cetera, will continue, tax will continue. And so God bless you. This is, as they say, on you. And we know you're making the best decision for us here. So thank you very much. And time has flown.
Is there any other public comment on ordinance 23-06? Back to the Assembly for deliberation. As I said a long time ago, this is the perfect time to start tearing apart the budget and making it real hard on John. So if anyone has some good ones for him, now's the time. Tor, and then Kevin.
Yeah. First of all, and I think I'm not going to be the only one saying this tonight, I want to thank the staff, and especially the finance department and the administrator. This is kind of the second time we've gone through it like this. And it really is nice. The information was always laid out in such a fashion. It was easy to figure out where we were going, what we were doing. We had really nice information given to us before the meeting, so there were no surprises. And as always, it seems like the finance department is very conservative in their budget, in their revenue forecasts, and careful on their, and probably overstating the amount they need to spend so that they make sure that we're make sure we have enough. And it's always interesting that every year we spend less than we think we're going to spend, which is good, which is, and we But again, the finance department has made the process of, even though we had to, I don't remember how many meetings, but it was a lot. You know, to make the process work and to make it transparent. And I just, again, want to thank you for that. And I think everything's been said about the actual budget over the many meetings, but because of that, I don't have a whole lot to say about the budget that hasn't been already said in other meetings. So thank you.
I don't have much to say. Tor took the words out of my mouth. Basically ditto. Thank you for the staff. I have no questions at this time. Again, this is a, highly educated estimate. So if we need to make changes throughout the year, we can. And many times we do. So I'm in favor of this.
Anything further from the assembly on the budget? Jess?
On motion 2306, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Yestat,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on the first reading.
Thank you. That'll bring us to item D this evening.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-07 on first reading, adopting the budget and capital improvement plan for the enterprise funds for the fiscal year July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, amending rates in Title 15 Public Utilities of the Sitka General Code and adopting mortgage rates and other harbor fees.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. John, do you have an introduction for this item as well?
No further introduction other than this is for the enterprise funds outside the general fund and the rates associated with those funds.
Thank you. Any public comment on ordinance 23-07?
Good evening, Richard Ween. Did I say the time has flown and we're already in the budget season? But I repeat myself. This is about the enterprise funds and rates and so forth. And believe it or not, the rates, electric 3%, that's this year, water 6%, wastewater 8.5%, solid waste 6.7.5%, and moorage 7.3%. 500 homes had their property reassessed up to 18%, and we all know what food costs. The important thing here is it's not the fact that we may have to increase rates in order to keep the lights on. It's a question of what are you going to do? Because the rates will continue to go up. And what are you going to do within a budgetary notion or demonstrate to the people of Sitka, or at least to myself, on what you're going to do in the budget itself to cut or to stem growth in expense, and therefore put it perhaps back where the people need it into rates and infrastructure. So the bottom line, as always, is the devil is in the details. I know Melissa gives great slideshows. I think there's a great overview, but the devil is your, and I'm pointing to the assembly, your responsibility to go through a page turn on this budget and understand where money is being spent, how is it being spent over time, and whether it is appropriately done so. And God forbid you should find something that might be able to be reduced. Otherwise, we just become Sitka, DC, or rather Washington, DC, where you think you can print money. So again, it's going to pass. The rates are there. We are all dealing with it. And so it'd be nice to have a PFD at 3,400. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on ordinance 23-07? Assembly deliberation? Jess?
Yes, on the motion on 23-07, Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on first reading.
Thank you. That'll bring us to item E.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-08 on first reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2023 a street dump truck.
Second.
That's been moved in second. John, did you or a staff member have an introduction for this item?
Ron is available. If you don't mind coming up, Ron, I'll start to talk through it. But essentially, this was something that was budgeted for the last fiscal year. And as we've seen costs increase, that's really what we're experiencing on this. And the intent is to proceed with that purchase with the extra funding available or necessary to do that. But Ron, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Ron. If you had a brief introduction for the item.
Sure. Again, my name is Ron Benson. I'm the acting Public Works Director at the time. So I'm going to take you guys back a couple of years on this. Bear with me. Back in 2021, Unit 413, which is one of two sand trucks or dump trucks, 5-yard dump trucks that the city uses for operations and maintenance activities. Unit 413 was assessed and determined to be in need of replacement. Coming up into July of 2022, those funds were appropriated. Going into the FY23 budget year, we had those funds appropriated. We were unable to locate a vehicle for the $275,000 that was appropriated. Just the volatility of the market right now has been hard to keep up with. Upon further assessment coming through this last winter, we were able to identify that the partner unit for that dump truck actually is in more need of replacement. That would be Unit 378. Unit 378, or I'm sorry, excuse me, Unit 379. So Unit 379 is actually, I believe, 4 years older than Unit 413. And it has kind of been exposed or experiencing some pretty major need of repair in this last winter during snow and ice management activities. There was a turbo that went out. We're getting preliminary estimates of about $6,000-ish worth of repairs needed for that. There was also a hydraulic pump unit that was $4,000 to $5,000 that need to be replaced. And there's a oil tank on the unit that is currently leaking and is going to need to be replaced as well. So it's reaching its 15-year life expectancy, where we anticipate it to start basically encountering a lot more frequent failures. And as everybody knows, these units are used for potentially emergency response, different events that might happen, natural disasters. They're also used specifically for snow and ice management activities throughout the winter. And so it is critical to have these units. At this time, we're asking that we reappropriate the $275,000 that was originally appropriated for Unit 413 to instead replace Unit 379. And in addition to that, to keep up with inflation and to kind of get in front of the market volatility, we're looking to ask for an additional $50,000 supplement, which would help us give about a 10% contingency to get in front of any inflation between now and the time that this unit is actually purchased and received. I'll stop there if there are any questions or.
And if we have questions, we can call you back up
Okay,
after
thank you.
public comment.
Mayor, I actually have if you don't mind, I have a question for him that part of the introduction. Is that okay?
It is part of the introduction, yes.
Yeah. So as this comes forward, I think Ron has really laid out ways to transfer risk and mitigate some of the issues in front of you. That's part of our asset management efforts. So throughout this, Ron, you mentioned that Unit 413 and 379 are partner units. Are they, and Harry too, if you have the answer to this question, are they identical units? Are they similar with parts that can be transferred between the two of them? In other words, can we cannibalize parts from one to the other to help mitigate some of the impact?
I'm Harry Green, Street Superintendent for Sitka. About the only thing we can change on those two vehicles with each other is the snow plow itself and the tires. They're two, one's an International and one's a Freightliner. They're just not a lot of parts interchangeable.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. If we have further questions, we'll call you up.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on ordinance 23-08?
Good evening, Richard Ween. My gut instinct says if Harry Green feels this is something that's important, then we certainly do need it because he is a very knowledgeable individual mechanically. It's kind of a dangling profile. Anyway, the important thing is that this is a truck which has a plow and a sander. Now, without the plow and sander, if you went to the market, apparently it costs $153,000. And due to inflation and so forth, they want an additional 10%, in essence, $50,000 in order to be able to cover the ability to obtain a truck at market. So what they're asking for is $325,000. Now, an important thing to realize, if you haven't done so already, well, we need the other truck. This was kind of an accident. And so if that one costs $325, then that other one will cost $325. And so these are things that definitely need to be taken into consideration. One thing that I do feel needs to be mentioned, and that this is from my experience in reading information from New York. Why aren't these things electric? This is a perfect time for us to pick up electric trucks with snow plows and sanders on them. I really feel this could be the signal moment. And I know New York has tried them. And as a matter of fact, they tried them. So why not electric? Why do we still go for diesel? I ask you that question. Thank you.
Good evening, Kit Markow here. I'd like to also suggest we look at an electric replacement as the assembly has in 2020 or 21 passed ordinance for electrifying the fleet, and it's something we can see we need to do. We need to go that way. And right now there's a lot of opportunities for help in purchasing electric equipment and bringing it online. And it is the perfect time to make that step. And at 325,000, I would think we'd be able to, with help in the purchase price, we'd be able to maybe buy one for less. And there's so many less moving parts. I have to say this, I took apart my electric lawnmower, and the dang thing is just so simple. The moving parts are, it's where we need to go. The assemblies recognize that it's where we need to go, and so it's time to go. It's my opinion. Thank you.
Any other public comment on ordinance 23-08? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could have Ron Vincent, can I please?
Yeah, of course. Always.
So actually interesting that the two members of the public who spoke up, I went to the office and Ron had a few minutes for me and we talked about that very thing and asked him about it and we discussed it, people did discuss this. So if you could kind of let the assembly and the public know.
Sure. So there's a couple things to note. If we, certainly if we can find something that'll meet the specifications, that's something that we will do as our due diligence is to, look to see if that's possible. I don't think we have any opposition to that. Something to note in addition to that is we currently have funds appropriated and we are in the process of trying to seek out at least one pilot vehicle that will get us started on this project. Down this path. And we anticipate making that purchase hopefully in the next several months before change out of budget. And so, yeah, we're looking at an electric transit van that'll help support our custodial services. That'll give us a good pilot program to see how this works here in this climate. It'll be a good test case because those vehicles aren't specifically critical. So if they do go down, it's not like it's a police or fire vehicle that's going to go down. So we are moving down that path. Want to reassure everybody that we are trying to do that. We're taking some steps. And certainly with this vehicle, I think that if it can meet the specifications, there'd probably be no objection to that either.
So Ron, thank you, by the way. Yeah. So would I be accurate in stating that if we approve this, you will obviously look into an electric version of this if it's possible? My feeling is it may not be possible right now, but if you were to find one,
Sure,
definitely consider that. But so what you're saying is you would consider that, but if it's not, we need this like now for this winter or just for the future because it's a critical piece.
I'm not against other fleet vehicles going electric, but on these particular ones, I would be hesitant to go that way. So I've been looking at a lot of this. I got a lot of sticker shock on this one. I do come from the trucking industry. One of my friends down in Oregon just bought a Kenworth W900, maxed out every amazing option you could put on a truck. And it's coming in at the same price tag. But I do see that the vehicle itself is 150. Is there an option that the sander and the plow from these older trucks could work with the new the dump truck itself so we can reuse some of it? Or are those just worn out and shot as well?
Well, actually, one of the things we're doing is we're going to roll this plow truck that we're replacing over to a spare. So we have a good spare to use in case one of the newer trucks breaks down. Because our other rollover rig is every time we've used it, it's broke down. So it's not a good spare anymore. So we're trying to roll this truck we're replacing into a
Okay,
spare.
yeah, I could get that. And actually, I do like that idea because I do think it is pretty imperative that we have two vehicles during our snow period plowing. It seems like we definitely need it. So I can definitely get on board with that. I will tell you some of my hesitation with some of our newer diesels. I'm sure, Harry, you're fully aware of all the sensors and electronic issues that some of these new diesels have. Is this dealership, are they giving us any sort of guarantee for how to maintain these things if we have a sensor go, or are we gonna be flying people in, or how's this all gonna work out?
The only thing I can tell you is that this emissions on the newer diesels seems to be better, just because the old diesels, they put the emissions, they added it on to what was there. And they were not very good.
Yes, it was
So
pushed
now
way
the
too
newer
fast.
vehicles, they're built from the ground up with the emissions in mind. So the emissions seem to work a lot better in the newer vehicles.
All right, yeah, it's definitely a concern of mine. I tend to like the old school diesels.
I love the old school, but.
Yeah, I
we ain't gonna
know,
get
I
it.
know. Sadly, we're making changes. I mean, my engines are tier 2, which are electronic, but
yeah,
they're not pushed beyond their means. So if you feel confident that this newer, what are we, tier 4 now? That they're, I know. That their reliability has gotten better.
Yeah.
Okay.
The newer diesels we've got just in heavy equipment alone has been, the technology a lot better than it was 20 years
Okay.
ago.
Are you having good luck with their reliability? Because I know we have,
So far.
Exactly. I have been really happy to see Public Works updating their fleet of machinery, because it was pretty aged there for quite some time. So I've been happy to see you guys get some new stuff in there. Good, reliable equipment. So.
Yeah.
Further questions for Ron or Harry while they're up here? Crystal?
Couple of questions. So when I looked at the memo, it looked like 379 was the older one, right? Was that manufactured in 2006?
Correct.
So that was the one that was beyond the 15 years, and the 15 years was a new figure that wasn't presented in here. So based off of that conversation, knowing that that's the older one, but that wasn't the one that was identified, it was actually 413, correct?
Correct.
That needed the replacement. Is
Correct.
413 the next one to go?
Correct.
What timeline
It
are
is.
we on?
Could be 3 to 4 years, if you look at the model years and the existing condition.
Okay, and then I wasn't sure if it's now standard, we're talking about being carbon neutral and making positive changes for sustainability. Do you guys do cost comparisons of electric versus diesel? Does that come up as part of the process, or I guess layman, I don't know if those are even in the similar range.
Sure. So for this particular case, we did not do that because we were going off the original specifications that were appropriated. The request that we brought to the assembly in 2021 for the 2023 budget, that's what we were going off as the specifications for that. So that's what we're working with. Like I said, I think that it is appropriate and probably responsible to move forward and actually look at those things.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Harry or Ron while they're up here?
Not so much as for them, just a comment that I did a little bit of research on electric dump trucks. It doesn't sound like they're quite ready for prime time. There's a bunch of experimental ones and early ones, but I agree that when we inevitably have to replace the next one, I think it's something we really should look hard at, especially with a fast charger. Generally, with an hour gets you 80% of your charge, and they have, but right now they have a range of about 150 miles, which would probably, but it's interesting to look at. And I think that when we do finally switch over, I think we will see our maintenance go way down. So just a comment more on the process than this thing.
Well, thank you both for your time. And Harry, we know you like the old school. You're wearing suspenders.
Thank you.
Further deliberation from the assembly? John, I just have one for you. States that $50,000 is going to come out of the general fund. That's just going to be $50,000 less that we have to transfer to the infrastructure sinking fund. That's correct. Okay. So just a note for the assembly going forward, we're getting a vehicle to fix or to work on the roads at the cost of working roads. So anything else from the assembly? Jess?
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on first reading.
Great, thank you. It is just past the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and take a break and jump back into our last few items this evening. All right, well, the assembly is seated, so we will jump back into tonight's agenda, moving on to item F.
I move to authorize the municipal administrator to apply to the National Renewable Energy Laboratories Clean Energy to Communities Program in-depth partnerships.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. John, it looks like Scott perhaps has an introduction for this.
Yes, Mayor.
Welcome and thanks for your brief introduction on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you have the memo in front of you, so I'll go ahead and give a small introduction. The city and borough of Sitka has an opportunity to apply for a 3-year partnership with the National Energy Renewable Laboratories in their Clean Energy to Communities program. The city's electrical department has experience working with the National Renewable Energy Laboratories through the previously obtained ETIP grant, which provided approximately 1 year of technical support to the city of Sitka. The city was one of the top performers in the initial ETIP grant and has been encouraged to apply for this partnership. This partnership, if realized, would provide 3 years of technical support from the national laboratory at a value of up to $3.5 million and up to $500,000 in direct funding, which could be used to support staff or consultants assisting in the partnership. During the ETIP grant, the national laboratories assisted Sitka in identifying renewable resources, establishing rough costs associated with developing those resources, developing a grid model, and using that grid model to determine Sitka's capacity for additional renewable energy. This new opportunity with the C2C partnership can build on the work already done and provides the city of Sitka with ongoing support with help and will help with informed decision-making. The C2C program in-depth technical partnerships will focus broadly on cross-sectoral issues related to the renewable energy, transportation, and buildings. Energy security, resilience, and disaster preparedness, as well as energy equity and environmental justice, will be considered. This multi-year partnership will allow local decision makers to evaluate and test potential scenarios and strategies in their energy transition before full technology deployment, lowering risks to implementation. All right, that said, open to questions.
And we can ask questions during our deliberation. We'll call you back up if we have any. Thank you. Is there any public comment on item 23-066?
Well, good evening, and my name is Richard Ween. This has to do with authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for the National Renewable Energy Laboratories Clean Energy to Communities program, and with an in-depth partnership. What's very interesting is that I attended the lectures and so forth, and I thought they were like energy light. I didn't feel there was much to it. Then we had this other thing about, agreeing to a partnership, which we did. And then I read through this thing dated May 21st, May 3rd, and I still really don't, it says 2021. This was in the memorandum. I presume it's a date error, but in it, I really still don't understand what does the technical assistance look like. And I really, don't know what's going on here. I do know that the hook, the silver flasher, the cut plug, the herring is $500,000 in subcontracting funding and up to $3.5 million in no-cost technical assistance. Now, it was said here that the things were identified, that renewable resources were identified. What are we talking? Is there something we didn't know? Wind, solar, hydro, diesel, everything we knew about. And there's one thing that's missing in all of this funding stuff, in that you'll go through this whole process, you will all of a sudden say, this is something we must have, but then again, there's no real explanation about where the infrastructural funding would come from for all of this. How much would it cost to put in a hydrogen generator and through electrolysis, and then to store it and then to ship it? I mean, what are the costs for these things? They kind of went in on what a turbine costs or all of the solar panels, but it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense for those here. The bottom line is just give us the money and let us put it to Green Lake. You don't get any greener than Green Lake. This is just some fancy way to just pushing around cash where it should be better placed. Thank you, federal government.
Is there any other public comment on item 23-066?
Kent Barkow here again. I'd like to speak in support of the application for this potential, and we don't know where it's all going, but one of the things the community probably needs to do is energy planning, so that we have a roadmap to the kinds of investments that we need to make and make sense. And in parallel, we could be talking to experts about what does make sense, what is feasible. And again, I think we know where we need to go, and it's time to get moving. Thank you.
Any other public comment on 23-066? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm fully in support of this. I think it's a wonderful idea. Yes, as someone who just spoke, so we don't know exactly every place where this is going to go, but we're going to apply for this. And if we get it, it's going to be very, very helpful. We, with the last ETIP grant, it did help find several alternative sources. And so this is basically the next phase where we get more into the details and to, okay, these are the possibilities, what to really drill down. And though it will cost a little some staff time, it was a very, very from what I've been told, talking to Scott Elder and others, that it was, the last round was very productive and very helpful and very professional. And I don't think there's going to be any opposition to this, but I think this is a really good thing, and that we're putting it forward. Thank you, John and staff.
Anything else from the assembly? Jess?
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item F 23-066.
Thank you. That'll bring us to item G.
I move to approve resolution 2023-19 on first and final reading, urging the Alaska State Legislature to increase the base student allocation in fiscal year 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 23-19. Do either of the co-sponsors have a brief introduction for this item?
Yeah, sure. So basically, JJ and I were approached by a member of the school board that asked that we partner with them and try to support them in this. This obviously, for anyone who's looked at the school district resolution, is basically a copied version, just changing it to, the city and borough of Sitka, et cetera. I just feel that more people asking is better than not, and unity is stronger than disunity. I don't know what it's going to do, but because the legislature changes what they're going to do from day to day. And it's a real challenge and very, unfortunately, not necessarily clear. And so in supporting this, we just want to support the school district and their request to ask that we have more from the state. And I think it goes without saying, when the oil money dried up in the state left all towns and communities with two basic things that are almost untenable to do, is infrastructure and education. We've been left holding the bag to pay these things. So I'm definitely in support. JJ, did you have anything to add to it?
No, just a quick, it's, about these kids, they need their education. It's one of the state's things they need to cover. And if they do it to a full degree, the kids are better off.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment on resolution 23-19?
My name is Martina Kurzer. I'm very much in support of this resolution. However, I would prefer to see a value attached to this. So we want to, we urge you to increase the student allocation by so and so many dollars per student. I think that makes it way more clear. Thank you.
Good evening, Richard Ween. I know it's a first. I'm going to take a controversial, contrarian position. One thing that is noted is that every year that I can recall, the school district has basically been in crisis mode. And on line 31 of the resolution, again, we hear this, and that is, we are facing the prospect of laying off 17 teachers, 15% of our district's teaching staff, eliminate entire programs, increase pupil to teacher ratios by as much as 25%. And even with the BSA that they're looking at, base student allocation, it's still not enough. Now, one of the interesting things about the CETA presentation was that one of the basic demographics, which is declining, are school-age children. And another thing that we look over 10, 15 years of demographic data, the number of students have declined throughout. And so it is, I'm sorry to say, is it ever possible to teach with a reduced budget? I don't get it, especially with, it may have been shown that ratios, student teacher in the lower grades may have some basis, but certainly not in the upper. And the bottom line is, I think that it would be very healthy, and the students would maybe learn one of the basic life lessons, and that just because you cry and whine, you may not get what you want. And I think that you can have as good an education with what you're doing less. You really can. I don't understand this. And so have your resolution. My suggestion again is do the PFD, get a full PFD, and then have people who are parents give their PFD $3,500 a head into the fund. But to me, education is in a very real way what you make it, and it doesn't require all this money. You can do it on the cheap. They did it on the Little House on the Prairie with McGuffey readers, and we have a hit TV show. Think of it. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak to resolution 23-19? Assembly deliberation. Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I will enthusiastically vote yes on this. It's, we'll see if it makes any difference, but it's worth a try. And I think the language in there makes it well. I mean, the fact of the matter is the state hasn't been doing its job for a number of years, not taking into account any raises in the BSA. But they sure haven't hesitated to add requirements to the schools, a laundry list that all cost money that they haven't put any more money in. And so I for what it's worth, I think I know that our legislators from Sitka are fighting for this, both of them. And maybe this will give them that last straw. I mean, I can talk about why we need to, I mean, I know I have a love-hate relationship with the cap. Because I'm up here, I love it because we've given all we can. I mean, we might be able to dance around the edges a little bit, but we can't do any more effectively. So it's up to the state now. And, you know, I definitely think that as a society, we need to spend more. You know, I don't think we want our kids stopping at 8th grade like they used to 150 years ago. So anyway, for what it's worth, I think we should do this. Sorry to ramble.
Tim?
Yeah, I think this is actually, I think this language matters a lot. The BSA is a lot different than school funding. And it's different in the sense that the BSA is an ongoing commitment by the state to fund to a particular level. And they haven't really increased the BSA for about a decade. And instead what they've done is once the need is made clear to them, then they give what's called one-time money. And one-time money is exactly what it sounds like. It can't be relied upon. And that's actually why the school district always ends up in front of the assembly saying, we're broke, we have no money. And it has to do with the fact that while the state generally comes through with enough to keep the budget balanced in the end, it's not something you know about in advance, and it's not something you can count on. So encouraging them to put it into the BSA is actually a lot different than asking for more funding. It's asking for more funding on an ongoing basis so that the district can count on that when it comes to next year, and they're trying to keep the teachers around. So if they if they give us money, which is actually what the Senate has done at this point, they've said $650 BSA equivalency is where they sit, but it's not in the BSA. It's one-time money. So next year they will have the same base student allocation. The school district will have to start with where we're at. And you may recall that the school board this year balanced their budget by estimating that the state would give the equivalent of $450 to the BSA. But if you don't put it in the BSA, you can't count on it year to year. So I think this is this language is important to keep the BSA is the important piece of this. Asking for more money, I mean, that's a given, but putting it in that BSA is as important as giving more money. So I think that's the biggest reason why we really need to push our legislators to put it inside. The governor has said he's not interested in BSA increases, so we'll see where it goes.
Crystal?
I guess kind of related to that. So the title is to urge the legislature to increase. But in the now therefore be it resolved, we also reference Governor Dunleavy. So I need an update from the sponsors. Where are things at? Are things looking strong, or is this a struggle? Because I'm in alignment with the person who gave testimony saying there should be a factor, a figure there. The last whereas states it was proposed at 1,000 and then 800. Do we have a figure?
Yes. Oh, did you want to? So it's interesting you say that, and then someone said it here, and then a member of the public asked me about it today. basically, as I say, I just copied this. I didn't really put a lot, but as I was thinking about it today, since someone brought it up, I'm okay with it just being as is because I don't have a lot of confidence they're going to do a lot with this, other than it'll be important to have it for our legislators to have and say, listen, we need more. And the point is, to Tim's point, which I really appreciate what you said, it's not just about the money, it's about consistency, because they can't plan every year. You know, we need to have a steady income so that people can plan every year. And they do need to be paying more. So I get what you're saying. It would be nice to have that set dollar amount. I just don't have it.
Yeah, I think I would have shot for the stars and said 1,000 or to the extent feasible. Because that did stand out to me as well as I read through it. I said, this sounds great. Obviously, I'll support it. I don't know how influential it is because it just says just give money kind of thing.
Yeah.
When it had those figures right above it, maybe this would be lending support to, well, we really like where the Senate is going with this. But again, I'm not anti-supportive of this. And then I also my question came up with a different resolution that we supported previously. It was, where do we expect this to go to have its most impact? And it sounds like we're going to start where it's at, which is our legislators, and then hopefully they will funnel it up, because it feels like the sticking point is more at the statements made by Dunleavy as far as increasing this rate. It feels like that's where the impact needs to be. And I get it. We're just trying to list off all of these people who are saying, let's increase it finally. And we're just another one that we want to add to it. So those were the two things that as I read through it, but I do appreciate that. And I did hear your comment saying we kind of just duplicated what was before us. And if the school board said, this is fair enough, let's just advocate for more money, doesn't really matter how much. I'm there too, I guess. I support it as
Thank
it
you.
reads.
Yeah, I'm okay either way. You know, if somebody wanted to make a motion to specify, I'd be okay. I don't, you know, I'm okay with whatever. I just think this in general is a good idea. Well, yeah, thank you.
Further assembly deliberation? Jess, on the resolution?
On resolution 23-19, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on resolution 23-19.
That'll bring us to item H, to assign an assembly liaison to the tourism task force. This had been overlooked during the initial part, so we need to assign a primary and secondary, not looking at any particular people, but I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I was a part of creating it, so yeah, I mean, definitely I'll throw my name in the hat.
Yeah, and if
I
you
don't-
guys
I
are
don't care on
interested,
that way.
that'd be great. If not, if there's time commitments or whatever, we understand as well, and we can debate that as a body, but we'll
Well,
throw it
it's kind-
forward to the co-sponsors first if
It's
they-
kind of built into my schedule.
Sounds
My
like
normal
primary?
summertime, whatever, but I don't know. It's
Do you
it's
wanna
up to you.
be-
If you want to be primary, I got no problem.
I'll go for primary.
Okay.
Okay.
Primary and alternate?
Yeah.
Any disagreement amongst the assembly? I think everyone's just relieved they didn't have to. Thank you both for that. Do appreciate that. That'll bring us on to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item on or off tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual.
Good evening, Richard Lean. I do scan the news of the globe, and that there is a shout out I'd like to give, and that is to a young lady whose name is Quinan Chasing Horse. And she was and is an indigenous model from Alaska. And that where her latest claim to fame is that she was invited to the Met Gala. And needless to say, I'm tempted. So I went through like 196 pictures and looked at everybody's pictures. And what a waste of money. They could have fed a European country with the amount that those dresses cost. But Ms. Chasing Horse was, of course, quite beautiful. But that's a shout out for her, and go take a look at it. Go take a look at her online. One of the important things that I'd like to speak about is, and I've been interested in this for a number of years, and that is AI, artificial intelligence. And as you know, with GPT chat, the things are coming to a head, and it's really coming to life. Now, my notion is that the apps that we get to see are just the tip of the iceberg at what is actually available. And I had read an article recently on what jobs are going to get totally whacked. I think legal may get a little hit. Paralegals are going to get a little hit. Accountants, bye. No problem. I can definitely live without my accountant, even though he's a nice guy. But you get the idea. And in medicine, it's radiologists who it's just a question of reading pixels. It's just pattern reading. And this is something that's really going to come through. And another thing is that algorithmic medicine is just totally out there. And so what's going to happen is that mid-levels are going to take over the algorithmic type medicine. And it's going to be a real problem with family practitioners and so forth. But I also want to talk about how education is being affected and how, in essence, it's going to end up being just facilitated teaching, not cheating, but well, students will cheat on this GPT stuff. So the bottom line is right now they have iPads and they can see what their keystrokes are, what mistakes they're making, etc. So this is coming in big. And you know what? It'll save a lot of money.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening? Any item on or off tonight's agenda? That'll bring us to reports. I have no report this evening other than the traffic revision has happened at the Lake and Lincoln Light. It was a interesting go through there this morning. I think everybody was going straight and nobody was turning. And although I did bet John $5 we'd have a fender bender, and I think I owe him $5 because we haven't had one yet. So just be aware as you're coming through the Lake and Lincoln Light that the left lane is left turn only, and you do go straight now through the right lane. John, I'm sure you'll have a little bit more about that, but that is my report this evening.
You took my report, Mayor. I have no further report.
You're supposed to make me sound better. Brian?
I almost hit somebody in the intersection this morning. That's my report.
Brian, you cost me $5, but I'm thankful for that person that the collision was avoided. Any liaison representatives this evening? Chris?
I do have one. Sadly, I actually missed the meeting, but it is kind of big news. The GPIP board selected the location for the haul out, and it's actually where the existing ramp is. So it was our second choice on the list. The next stage of the haul out process is subject matter expert meeting, which should happen early June. And then there will be another public meeting after that sometime a little bit later. So that was kind of big news on that front.
Hey, I'll try to be quick. Just have one report. I attended the Sustainability Commission meeting on May 2nd. They did just three main items. They listened to a presentation by the chair of the Energy Subcommittee of the Juneau Commission on Sustainability and the Deputy Director of Public Works and the staff liaison for basically was presenting the developing of their community renewable energy strategy. So it was an informational thing for the commission. Among other things, they also approved a support letter for Sitka Local Foods Network and Transition Sitka's community garden concept.
Crystal? I have two reports. So today I just attended the Parks and Rec Committee meeting. I could sum it up in three areas. One was also they requested a letter of support for the community garden. So they reviewed the draft and the second was the discussion about, and this was just a discussion, e-bikes as far as safety and maintenance, especially on trails. That's a point that they want to take up a few months out. So they just had a short discussion about that. And then the last one, we had a presentation by Andrew Roseman, and what he wanted to do was show them an overview of the new scheduling tool for facilities throughout the borough. So it'll also have the capacity for individual users to sign up for like some of these community programs. It's not quite there, but if you wanted to rent a space at a field, for example, they have a new system that they're using. As far as when they want to roll that out, they were thinking June or later, so sometime this summer, as far as the facilities go. And it was sitka.ak.myrec.com, and they just basically walked us through it and showed the user experience. So they're kind of excited about that. Library Commission, I attended that earlier this month. And so February and April, of course, I've been mentioning fun celebratory events for the centennial celebration. So they kind of debriefed that and then looked at policy. They're going through the policies just to make sure that they're up to date. So material challenge policy was something that they put eyes on. Didn't make movement. That'll be at the next upcoming meeting. And then they also discussed the potential to bring a library conference here. I believe it's not till 2025, but the director is also going to put together a memo so that they could consider that at the next meeting. So those are the big topics happening there. Thanks.
All right, Jess.
So we have several vacancies on boards and commissions, the Animal Hearing Board, Health Needs and Human Services, Investment Committee, the Library Commission, the LEPC, and Parks and Rec Committee, and one seat available still on the Tree and Landscape. We are going to be having an organizational tourism task force meeting next Tuesday, May 16th at 6 p.m. here. And that will be an organizational meeting for the tourism task force.
Great, thank you. Any other reports this evening? Kevin?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify for members of the public, those who might be listening right now. I found this, I think I was misinformed. The state DOT turn, I thought they were going to put an actual turn signal on. I found out before the meeting when I was talking to John and Stephen that they're actually not going to be doing that. So it's just going to be the thing that they did, painting the lines and changing the traffic. So for anyone who's listening, that's all it's going to be.
All right, thank you for that. That'll lead us to adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Assembly, for your time. We are adjourned.